Hello and welcome back to IXL Tutorials. This is Mr. Duffick, and today we are doing IXL R10, which is just solving a series of right triangles. So R10 is really just a summary of pretty much all of the R's 1 through 9 before this one. In those R's, we learned how to do certain elements of solving right triangles, so solving for angles, solving for other sides, and using trig functions to do so. R10 is really just a culmination of all that, and now you're going to do a series of problems that ask you to find pretty much all of the angles and all of the sides that are missing here. And also what's worthy of note is the first few steps, the first few levels of difficulty in IXL pretty much all revolve around either 30, 60, 90 triangles or 45, 45, 90 triangles. Okay, which makes this easier. So we'll look at this first problem here, and it says solve the right triangle. And what I would do is I would first look at the angle and see what kind of triangle we have. And we have a 90-degree angle here. We have a 30-degree angle here, meaning this has to be a 60-degree angle, right? Because 30 plus 60 plus 90 is 180, meaning this is a 30, 60, 90 triangle, meaning that our hypotenuse is going to be h, the short leg is going to be 1/2 the hypotenuse, and our long leg is going to be the square root of 3 all over 2 times the hypotenuse. Okay, so if that's the case, for the hypotenuse, then this side over here is just going to be half of that, which is 3 square roots of 5. And up here is going to be the square root of 3 over 2 times 6 square roots of 5, which equals 6 divided by 2 is 3, and then square root of 3 times 5 is 15. So 3 square roots of 15. Okay? So then we're going to go down to what they're actually asking for. It says the length of RS equals, we got 3 square roots of 5. Okay, QS is 3 square roots of 15. Keep in mind you're going to want to simplify all of these if you can. We can't break 5 or the square root of 15 down any further, so we're not going to touch it. And then angle R is going to be 60. Like that. Okay, so we'll go back. We'll do 3 square roots of 5. We'll do, 3 square roots of 15. And then lastly, 60 degrees. And there we go. Okay, so similar deal here. 30, 60, 90 triangle. 30, 60, 90 triangle. Okay, this is a little unsure of some of the details, and that's fine. So the other way, and probably the more correct way to solve these problems, as in this is what you can do for every single problem, earlier was just shortcuts, is by using trig functions. Okay, so it says it wants us to find HI, so the hypotenuse, and it wants us to find angle H and then angle I. So let's start with the hypotenuse. Well, we know that the hypotenuse can be found using the Pythagorean theorem, right? So we have this side of the right triangle, and then this side of the right triangle is A and B, and then our hypotenuse is going to be C. So we'll do A squared plus B squared equals C squared. A is 48, so 48 squared plus B squared is going to be 48 and 3 square root of 3 squared equals C squared. Okay, so now we do 48 squared, and 48 squared is going to be 2,304 plus, we know 48 squared is 2,304, and then times 3, the square root of 3 times square root of 3 is just 3, equals C squared. So I'll factor these two out now. 2,304 plus 2,304 times 3 is going to be 6,912 equals C squared. Now to add those together, that is going to equal 9,216 equals c squared. Now we don't want c squared, we want c. So to do that, we have to square root both sides. Okay, the square root of c squared, those two are just going to cancel out, so it just cancels out to c. And so we're left with the square root of 2,916 being 96. Okay, so C is 96, aka HI is 96. Good. Now we've got to figure out what the angles are. So to do that, we are going to use our trig functions, and let's use sine of h, because we know sine is opposite over hypotenuse, right? So we can go opposite, which is 48 square root of 3, all over the hypotenuse, which of course is 96. Okay, this is just going to be the square root of 3 over 2, right? 48 divided by 96 is just 1/2. Okay, so we have h as and we know that when sine ends up equaling the square root of 3 over 2, we know that is going to be 60 degrees. Okay, we've talked about that in other IXLs. And then let's do cosine of h. Okay, actually. Okay, and since that is going to be 60 degrees, that means we know from the triangle angle theorem that this has to be 30 degrees because all three angles have to add up to 180. 30 plus 60 plus 90 is 180. So angle H is going to be 60, while I is going to be 30. Okay, so we will submit all that. We'll go 96. H is going to be 60, and then I is going to be 30. Let's double check. Yep. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to jump again. Okay, let's do this problem now. And that problem might have been a 30, 60, 90 triangle, which helped us carry this further. But now we do not have that luxury. So we need to use our trig functions. So we have 90 and then 67, meaning our last degree value here has to be 23. Okay, so we already have this part done, 23 degrees. And now we got to figure out what the other two sides are. Now, keep in mind, this is not a special right triangle, so we don't have those nice little ratios on the sides, like 1/2 of the hypotenuse for the short end and stuff like that. So what we do have to do is we have to use our trig functions. So I'm going to write down sine of w. I'm going to pick that angle, sine of w. And sine of w is going to be opposite over hypotenuse, so 3 over the hypotenuse, right? Hypotenuse is here. And we know what w is, it's 23, so it's sine of 23 equals 3 over the hypotenuse. Okay, so now I want to get h by itself because I want to figure out what the hypotenuse is. So we'll multiply both sides by h. So we have h times sine of 23 equals 3. And then we'll divide the sine of 23 to this side here. So that is going to be h, the hypotenuse, equaling 3 over sine of 23. Okay, use your calculator to figure out what sine of 23 is. I'm just going to go to Google real quick and type in 3 divided by sine of 23 degrees. And that is going to be 7.7 for our side here, which looks accurate. Okay, so H is 7.7. Okay, now let's use trig functions to figure out what our missing side is for Wx. Okay, so for that we can use cosine. So we'll do cosine of 23. And cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, so cosine is going to be the adjacent, which is unknown. I'm just going to write Wx over the hypotenuse, which is 7.7. And then we'll figure out what it is. So we'll multiply both sides by 7.7. Okay, until we are left with Wx equals 7.7 times cosine of 23. Go to the calculator. We'll do 27 times cosine of 23. Is that correct? Oh, 7.7, sorry. 7.7 times cosine of 23 degrees. And that is going to be 7.1 for the length. So this is going to be 7.1, 7.1. And we have all of our answers here. So we're going to plug those in. That's going to be 7.7. We have 7.1. And then our degree value was 23. There we have it. Okay, so make sure to use your trig functions. That's kind of the point of the last half of these IXLs. You're going to want to use the trig functions to find your missing values. Okay, so I'm going to skip again to 85, nothing new. Skip again to 92, to the end here, and you really have nothing new here. You do not have angles, you just have sides, but that's fine, right? We'll just use our inverse trig functions. Okay. So let's see what we have. What I would do is I would come up with a trig function that is going to encompass both of these. So we'll choose angle, V right here. Okay. And we have the hypotenuse and we have opposite. So we're going to choose sine of V, which is the opposite over the hypotenuse. Okay, the opposite is 5 and the hypotenuse is 9.3. Again, it's important to choose a function that will have you using both pieces of information that you already have. That way we can start pulling other pieces of information we do not have quite yet. And so what we're trying to pull here is V, angle V, and then we can use that to find the rest of our information. Okay, so now we have sine of V equals 5 over 9.3, and that is the same thing as saying arc sine of 5 over 9.3, and that is going to give us our degree value here. So I'm going to go back to the calculator. I'm going to type in arc sine of 5 over 9.3 in degrees, and the degree value is going to be 32.5. Okay, so this is going to be 32.5 degrees, and that's going to be for V, right? So here's going to be 32.5. So 32.5. And now we know all three have to add up to 180. And so what does X have to equal? Well, 180 minus 90 minus 32.5. What do we have left over? That is going to be 57.5. Like this. Okay. Now we just want to figure out our last side right here. And again, we can use the Pythagorean theorem to do that because it is a right triangle. And a short side is going to be A, the long leg is going to be B, and the hypotenuse will always be C. So we have A squared plus B squared equals C squared. A squared is going to be 25 squared plus our missing B squared equals C squared. 9.3 times 9.3 is going to be 86.49. 5 times 5 is 25, and then we have our plus B. Okay, now I'm going to subtract the 25 from both sides. Okay, B squared equals, just subtract 25 from that, we're going to get 61.49. Okay, and then we're going to square root both sides because we don't want B squared, we want B, right? So these cancel out. We are left with B equals, and I'm going to do the square root of 61.5. I'm going to round that way. So 61.5, and that is going to be 7.8. B is going to be 7.8. Okay, so this is going to equal 7.8. 7.8, which looks pretty accurate when looking at the rest of the sides. So we'll go back and we'll input our answers as 7.8 and 57.5 and 32.5. That's going to be correct. Okay, so you get the idea. Just use the information you have to use the information, or to find the information you don't have, and you will be able to find everything. So that's where I'm going to stop the video. Study hard, stay safe, and I will catch you later for the next IXL tutorial video. Goodbye.